now. I'm joined by the Labour MP for Pendle and Clitheroe, that's Jonathan Hinder, the journalist and broadcaster, the legend, Alistair Stewart. And I'm also joined by the director of the popular conservative movement, Popcons, Mark Littlewood. Huge amount to talk about there. But one thing that leapt out to me, Mark, it's all about the money. It really is all about the money. If they're talking about, Sir Keir Starmer said, we're working hard to set the path to 2.5%. At the same time, Donald Trump, I believe, by the way, the guy's not even in the room. It's the person dictating the march and the tattoo of this today. If Donald Trump says, actually, lads, it's 5%, this lot is it's just a talking shop.
Martin, you've nailed it right there. I mean, essentially, we heard from two very important and influential welfare recipients of American military aid. That's what we heard from. The USA is the vital cog in the wheel for NATO, and President Trump and I guess the American people are starting to run out of a bit of patience here. And Keir Starmer and Mark Rutte can talk about roadmaps and we're on a pathway to this. This is utterly ludicrous. This was essentially set up in the Cold War scenario, and I am unsurprised that Americans are saying we don't want to pay for this anymore. It is not really a geopolitical problem. It is principally a European security problem. And the Europeans, I'm afraid, have got too used to spending dollars and not enough sterling and not enough euros. And this is really going to change NATO. I think NATO is in danger. An institution that I love, actually. I think Western security is incredibly important. But I think it is unreasonable for us on this side of the pond to expect the Americans to pick up most of the tab.
And I wonder, Alistair Stewart, when you look at the numbers, the NATO funding numbers for last year, the primary owner, obviously, the United States of America, $875 billion. The UK second with a mere 80 billion, less than a tenth. Germany, 70 billion, France, 57 billion, Italy, 32 billion, a mere fraction, crumbs, compared to what America is putting in ostensibly for the defence of Europe. And I wonder how much the Prime Minister talking to Mark Rutte about we will build stronger relationships actually matters. Do you feel that Donald Trump is going to look at this and think, do you know what? I'm sick and my taxpayers are sick of defending Europe. It's about time you lot coughed up.
Absolutely, and let us not forget for one moment the Trumpian slogans that got him re-elected with the majority in the Electoral College and of the popular vote, and that was Make America Great Again. That takes money, dollars, cents, and America First. America First. So if you've got people who are wrestling at the moment, like the poor souls in California recovering from the fires, they want those dollars and cents before it goes into defending Europe. The only thing I would say in the smutty old world of politics is I actually, and it surprised me because I talked about Sir Keir's ineptitude at the very beginning of our conversation, and I think he's made that an art form in his premiership so far, ineptitude. I thought he handled that really rather well, because to avoid him and the United Kingdom becoming the next and immediate target of American trade wars, he was actually saying all the right things. He was even blowing air in Trump's direction about how great the United States had been in defending the Ukraine and urging publicly all of his NATO European colleagues to stump up the cash. And did he have any choice? Yes. I mean, he could easily have got it wrong and put it wrong. And it was interesting to note the Secretary General of NATO had to correct himself. Not Sir Keir, 3 times.
Interesting. Jonathan Hinder, let's bring you in now. This is going to be some tightrope act, isn't it? Trying to keep Brussels happy, trying to keep Donald Trump happy, particularly, as we said earlier, Donald Trump has got his scope firmly set on Brussels in terms of trade tariffs, in terms of trade war, in terms of blowing NATO literally out of the water. If he asks for a 5% stump up, which he absolutely said he'd do all along, he could well do tomorrow. He might do it tonight. We've got the most unpredictable president in the history of the planet, and he's in no mood to negotiate. He seems like he's really going to play hardball. And I put it to you, is this a tightrope act that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, can keep going on? He can keep saying, it's important to have great relations with the EU and the US. But I thought the best question there was from a journalist who said, well, what would you do if America say you've got to choose a side?
Well, as you say, we've got unpredictable man in the White House at the moment, and it'll be a fool's game for me to try and predict what he's going to say next. What I would say on defence is that we are going to set out how we get to 2.5% of GDP in the spring. And let's remember how we got here. Highly respected Defence Secretary Ben Wallace described his own government, his own Conservative government, as having hollowed out our armed forces. We've got, on the other hand, Reform saying that they want to be best mates with Putin. So goodness knows where we'd be on defence if we had either of them.
I'm not
near
sure
power.
that's a fair thing to say.
Well, you go and look at the record as to what he's said in the past. So really, Labour is the party of defence now. We have said that we're going to get up to that.
So where are you going to move the money from to pay for more defence?
And Mark Rutte said that he wants to see more from the UK. The Prime Minister set out that he wants to see more.
So what are you going to cut to spend more on defence?
From our European allies.
I
and
think
that's what he's going to be talking about, as well as trade with the EU later.
But it is a fair question, Jonathan. I think a lot of people are going to be asking the same thing, and that is this. If we've got a £22 billion black hole now, what's that black hole going to look like when Trump drops the NATO bomb?
Well, as I say, we're going to set that out in the spring as to how we're going to get to 2.5%.
Why don't you set it out now?
Well, we've got to get in there, look at the books, and that's what we're doing.
You've had 6 months to look at the books.
Well, we're in the middle of a spending review, so I think it's legitimate.
2.5% of GDP you can calculate in 1 second. Why don't you commit that to defence?
We are committed to 2.5%.
Oh, you're committed.
Which
so
is
why don't we do that now?
That's what's going to be set out.
Well, it doesn't need to be set out. You can commit to that now.
Let's be clear
what are you going to cut in order to pay for
how
that?
we've got here, which is the previous
it's all the Tories' fault. But
I know you don't want to talk about that because obviously that's
the Tories were a disaster zone.
Well, I'm glad you say that.
But okay, how are you going to pay for it?
Gentlemen, that'll be a question for another time.
Given that there are going to be no more taxes anyway.
I suspect we won't get answers today, but look, thank you very, very much for all of you coming in. Jonathan Hinder, excellent. Anna Stewart, always an absolute pleasure. And of course, Mark Littlewood, combative as ever. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much.
Well, thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed that video, please make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the Popcorn YouTube channel. You can also find out more about us on our website, popularconservatism.com, and you can follow us on social media. Details are in the show notes below.